What causes the sexual objectification of women? The sexual objectification of women can be defined as reducing women to that of an object which is used primarily for men's consumption. Last year we had a big scandal at Harvard about the men's soccer team sexually objectifying women. And my topic is going to kind of link into why we made such a big deal out of this. And it's because sexual objectification of women has been linked to sexual violence. So perhaps if we can figure out what the predictors of the sexual objectification of women are, we can work out how to reduce sexual violence, such on college campuses or in the news. Big stories in the past couple of years with Larry Nassar. He was the medic on the gymnast team, the US gymnast team, and abused over 150 women and girls. Then also Brock Turner, a fantastic swimmer at Stanford, he sexually abused a woman who was unconscious. So it's a really important subject. A study I'm looking at looked at how pornography and exposure to sexually explicit material can lead to the sexual objectification of women through magazines or on the internet. It also looks at how adherence to traditional masculine norms, such as Playboy, which is being promiscuous, or thinking that men should dominate over women, or violence towards women, how acceptable that is. Then also if social media platforms such as Facebook or Instagram, etc., do they lead to the sexual objectification of women? And finally, does your peers have an impact on how you objectify women? A study that encompasses all these things was done by Renee McCorsky and Dawn Zimansky at the University of Tennessee. In 2016 it was published. It's called Masculine Norms, Peer Group, Pornography, Facebook, and Men's Sexual Objectification of Women. It was published in the Psychology of Men and Masculinity journal. How did they do this? Well, firstly, let's talk about the research questions. So they addressed one research question: are more masculine men more likely to sexually objectify women? Secondly, does pornography use, Facebook use, and your peers influence that relationship between sexually objectifying women and adherence to traditional masculine norms? How do they do it? So like we have here at Harvard, there's a psychology human research pool online which you can enter, and you can participate in research and get course credit or get money. So they entice students to do it by getting course credit. They got 329 males. Their ages 18 to 31. Primarily, the average age was 19. They're all heterosexual. Demographics: 75% of them are white, 12% were black, 8% were Asian, and 3% were Latino or other. So measuring the variables. Measuring conformity to masculine norms was done using the inventory of 46. This is a list of 46 questions, and each of the questions relates to some kind of masculine norm. Ones they looked at in particular was Playboy, power of women, and violence. So they measured how men adhere to being promiscuous by asking, if I could, I would frequently change sexual partners. They measured power of women by asking the question, things tend to be better when men are in charge. And they measured violence by saying sometimes violence is necessary. And participants answered on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 strongly disagree, 4 strongly agree. The mean was around 2, so on average men didn't agree with these statements. Pornography used was just measured by saying how often are you exposed to pornography or sexually explicit material on magazines or on the internet or in movies. On average, the max score you could get was 4.86, and this was saying you watch porn every single day, you watch for at least 90 minutes a day, and you do it every single week. Zeros mean you don't watch it at all. The average was 1.38, which means you did it kind of once a week for maybe half an hour. Association with abusive male peers. This was measured by asking the participants 3 questions. 1, how many of your friends had ever physically abused their girlfriends? Another one was how many of them had made unwanted sexual advances forcefully. And one was how often you insulted or sworn against your girlfriend or withheld affection. So it's just measuring how much your friends abuse their girlfriends or partners. And this was done on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being none of your friends did this, 5 being 10 plus of your friends did this. On average, people said none of their friends did it. Facebook use, pretty simple, using this questionnaire, how often they used it. On average, men said they used it once every 2 weeks, which I thought was really surprising since people seem to use it all the time now. And this was a recent study in 2016, but maybe we're using Snapchat more. Sexual objectification was divided into 2 groups. It was body evaluation and making unwanted sexual advances. Now there's a list of questions for each of these 2, and respondents answered them on a scale of 1 to 5. Example for body evaluation was how often do you find yourself staring at a woman's breasts, and then for making unwanted sexual advances, for example, is how often have you grabbed or pinched a woman's private body areas without permission. Scale of 1 to 5, and on average people said never or rarely. Results. So testing the first hypothesis, more masculine men are more likely to sexually objectify women. So we found significant relationships between the masculine norms and sexually objectifying women. Firstly, Playboy, power of a woman, and violence were all significantly associated to more body evaluation. P is 0.05, the correlations are written on the side there. Playboy was the most strongly correlated with more body evaluation. Next, Playboy and power of a woman were significantly associated with making higher levels of unwanted sexual advances. Correlational values are on the side. And I thought it was surprising that violence wasn't significantly associated with high levels of making unwanted sexual advances. Now, how did your peers influence that relationship between masculine norms and sexually objectifying women? Well, it had a strong influence. So this graph shows on the x-axis, this is how strongly they adhered to, for example, power over women. The mean score was 1.94, saying they didn't really agree with dominating over women. And then we have the standard deviations each side of it. The y-axis is how much people made unwanted sexual advances. And then what you can see from the graph is that those who were surrounded by highly abusive male peers, they were far more likely to make unwanted sexual advances. This was the same for Playboy, so those boys that thought it was okay to be promiscuous. They're even more likely to make unwanted sexual advances when they're around a group of boys which are highly abusive. And then this one I thought was even more interesting, is that even though on an individual level you may not think violence is okay against women, but when you're surrounded by a group of abusive males, you're far more likely to make unwanted sexual advances. Which probably makes sense when you think about it. And when you're in certain situations, you may not do it on your own, but when your peers kind of encourage you, you're far more likely to do it. Finally, pornography was significantly associated with more body evaluation and making more unwanted sexual advances. From the regression analysis, you've got beta values of 0.3 and 0.12, both significant. And then Facebook use was highly correlated with making unwanted sexual advances as well, which I thought was really surprising. If anything, I thought it would be more body evaluation. So the implications of this, well, firstly, since your peers has such an effect on you making more unwanted sexual advances, perhaps boys, you should choose your friends wisely, or girls, you should really take a close look at who your boyfriends are friends with, or potential boyfriends. Also, I thought the Facebook use was a really interesting indicator of sexually objectifying women, and I think it would be really interesting to look more into Instagram and Snapchat, because people often put pictures up of themselves and sexualizing themselves. And then finally, pornography. We spoke about it last week in the New York Times article, how young boys and girls are using it as a main source of sexual education. And if that's leading to the sexual objectification of women, perhaps porn literacy really needs to be emphasized in education, and perhaps pornography isn't as great as we think. Sexual selection process. So maybe using visual cues is just normal. We've always done it. Other animals do it too. But if I could point out this difference, is that hunter-gatherers, for example, the only way they could see a naked woman is like within an actual person. They couldn't just click on the internet and see sexually explicit material. So perhaps there could be a mismatch with this. So we are so exposed to so much sexualized media, maybe it does have negative impacts on our health. Limitations of the study, so like Esme's, this is all correlational data. It's not causation. So that weakens the results. And also, the questionnaire was self-reported, so boys may be more biased to say, oh, I never sexually objectify women, or I don't believe in violence. So we have to take these results with a hint of salt. But I do think they're still significant. That's my presentation. Thank you.